behind towering walls of pristine white marble, beyond the silence of colonnades and the whispered prayers beneath the Sistine Chapel, lies something far greater than just a spiritual center. It is an empire, one as wealthy as entire nations. An empire built over centuries by popes, kings, and secret orders. $50 billion in real estate. Treasures worth more than the GDP of entire countries. Relics said to have been touched by saints and believed to carry pieces of the divine. And at the head of this hidden world, not a king, not a president, not a billionaire, but a humble man in white. But who was he really? What lay behind Pope Francis's quiet smile? And why did his choices shake even the most powerful people on earth? In this episode, 8 unbelievable, closely guarded secrets from Pope Francis's hidden world. And fact number 8 will change everything you thought you knew about the Vatican. Morning, April 21st, 2025. The Vatican, the bells of St. Peter's Basilica didn't ring. They wept. News spread across the world. Pope Francis had died. He was 88. Behind him, nearly 9 decades devoted to prayer, service, justice, and faith. But he didn't pass as just a spiritual leader. He passed as the moral voice of an era, unafraid to look power in the eye and stand up for the weak. In his final hours, he held one of the most symbolic meetings of his life, with U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance. It was his last audience, and it became history. The world froze. The reaction was instant and global. From Washington came 2 delegations led by former rivals, Donald Trump and Joe Biden. For the first time in years, their words echoed together. Rest in the Lord, Pope Francis. May God bless you and all who loved you. Trump, Truth Social. From Moscow, Vladimir Putin thanked the pontiff for his efforts to bridge Catholics and the Orthodox Church. From Kyiv, Volodymyr Zelensky called Francis a sincere friend of Ukraine, a man who prayed for peace even in its darkest hours. United Kingdom, Prime Minister Keir Starmer called him a courageous leader who never lost hope. King Charles III, he touched the hearts of millions. Brazil, President Lula da Silva declared 7 days of national mourning and called Francis a voice of tolerance and human dignity. Argentina, the Pope's homeland. Despite political differences, even President Javier Milei bowed to history and declared national mourning for a great son of Argentina. His final months were a battle for life. In March 2025, Pope Francis was hospitalized with severe bilateral pneumonia. A sudden bronchospasm complicated his condition. Doctors fought to help him breathe. But as always, he defied the odds. And on Easter Sunday, April 20th, despite his weakness, he appeared on the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica to bless thousands of faithful. His voice was replaced by an aid, but Pope Francis's words pierced the heavens. Love conquers hate, light conquers darkness, truth conquers lies. A farewell marked by simplicity and symbolism. True to his mission, Pope Francis rejected luxury, even in death. He will be buried in a simple wooden coffin lined with zinc, with a small pouch of commemorative coins and a summary of his life, in the Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore, just as he requested. The next 9 days are a period of mourning in the Vatican. Thousands are gathering in St. Peter's Basilica to pay their final respects. World leaders, cardinals, and ordinary believers all stand in line to honor the man who redefined what it means to be pope. When a pope dies, it's not just the church that mourns, it's all of civilization. The death of Pope Francis set in motion one of the oldest and most symbolic rituals in human history, the farewell to the head of the Holy See. Immediately after his death began a period known as sede vacante, a time when the Apostolic See remains vacant. All official functions are suspended. The Vatican's coat of arms, with the keys of St. Peter and the papal tiara, is temporarily replaced by the emblem of the Camerlengo, the man who oversees the church in transition. It is the silence before the next choice. 9 days of mourning were declared by the Holy See. Each day, A memorial mass, the Novem Dialis, is held at St. Peter's Basilica to honor the late pontiff. A farewell without gold, without a throne. Francis requested that the traditional three-layered papal coffin be abandoned. Instead of cedar, lead, and oak, a simple wooden coffin, lined with zinc, a symbol of humility and integrity. No inlays, no ornate designs, no golden coats of arms. Only a pouch containing coins from his papacy, a copy of his spiritual testament, and a cross will be buried with him. Francis's body lies in St. Peter's Basilica, where pilgrims from around the world line up for miles to say goodbye. More than 5 million people are expected to visit during the days of mourning. That's more than came to bid farewell to Pope John Paul II. The Italian government is considering organizing a full state funeral, despite the fact that the Pope was not an Italian citizen. To the world, he was a spiritual figure of global scale. Security in Rome has been heightened, streets are closed, and thousands of soldiers and volunteers are helping manage the massive crowds. Giant screens are set up in St. Peter's Square. Flags across Europe and Latin America are flying at half-mast in mourning. Over 100 world leaders are expected to attend. The funeral ceremony is held on the 6th day. The funeral mass is led by the Dean of the College of Cardinals. By tradition, this cannot be the reigning pope. After the final blessing, Pope Francis's coffin is carried to his chosen place of rest, the Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore. He chose it because he prayed there before every major trip and always turned to the Virgin Mary, protector of the poor and forgotten. No mausoleums, no granite sarcophagi, just a simple plaque bearing his name and dates. The next phase is just as important: the conclave, the election of a new pope. A ritual cloaked in smoke, oaths, and the waiting gaze of the world. The death of a pope is not the end. It's the beginning of the next act in the nearly 2,000-year-old drama called the Roman Pontificate. After mourning comes the time to choose. And that choice is not made by the people or by elites, but by the College of Cardinals, deep within the walls of the Vatican, behind doors closed to the world for centuries. Locked in. Literally, 15 to 20 days after the funeral, the conclave begins, the secret gathering of cardinals to elect the new pope. The word conclave literally means, with a key, locked away. And that's exactly what happens. All participants are sealed inside the Sistine Chapel, with no phones, no internet, no outside contact. Who can vote? At the time of Francis's death, there are around 230 cardinals in the world, but only those under the age of 80 are eligible to vote. Each cardinal is given a ballot, a simple card with the Latin phrase, Elego in summum pontificem, meaning, I elect the supreme pontiff. Cardinals secretly write down the name of their chosen candidate, fold the ballot, and place it into a chalice set before the altar. Each round of voting ends with the counting and burning of the ballots, sending a signal to the world through the chimney above the Sistine Chapel. If no candidate receives 2/3 of the votes, black smoke rises. That means no pope yet. The world waits. As soon as someone reaches the required majority, the ballots are burned with a special compound. White smoke rises above the Vatican. At that moment, the crowd in St. Peter's Square falls silent. Cameras, reporters, pilgrims, all eyes turn to the sky. The world waits for 2 words: Habemus Papam. The new pope steps out for the first time onto the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica. He doesn't give a grand speech. He stands in silence. He looks out, and then he blesses the world, a world that once again has its shepherd. But until the white smoke appears, all eyes remain fixed on what Pope Francis left behind. Not just treasures, not just reforms. He left behind an invisible empire, one he ruled while remaining almost invisible himself. When we hear the word Vatican, we imagine silence in the cathedral, whispered prayers, maybe Michelangelo's frescoes and the Pope's white robes. But there is another Vatican, hidden, closed off, an empire with assets rivaling the economies of nations, all managed from a territory of just 44 hectares. The Vatican owns a vast real estate portfolio stretching across Rome, Milan, London, Paris, Geneva, New York, and dozens of other cities. According to reports, the total value of these holdings exceeds $50 billion. And that's just the real estate, not including gold, art, antiquities, stocks, or investments. Inside Vatican City, private apartments, guest houses, archives, administrative buildings, and even a private bank. The Institute for the Works of Religion, that's the official name of the Vatican Bank. It manages billions of euros and handles transactions for cardinals, monasteries, and Catholic organizations across the globe. The bank has a reputation for secrecy and even scandal. It has faced accusations of corruption, money laundering, and financing political agendas. But under Pope Francis, much began to change. Reforms, audits, transparency initiatives. Still, the Vatican's financial engine remains one of the most closed systems in the world. Deep within the Vatican lie secret vaults of relics, off limits even to most cardinals. There are kept a splinter of the true cross, encrusted with gold and sapphires, the spear of Longinus, said to have pierced the body of Christ, the veil of Veronica, believed to bear Christ's face, the bones of Saints Peter and Paul sealed in golden reliquaries, papal tiaras covered in hundreds of precious stones, sacred vessels, chalices, manuscripts, and vestments, some worth tens of millions each. Experts believe that the relics alone, if ever sold, could be worth over $100 billion. But to the Church, this is not wealth. It is a connection to eternity. The Vatican Museums house more than 70,000 artifacts, from Leonardo da Vinci to Raphael and Caravaggio, frescoes, mosaics, sculptures, and handwritten manuscripts by saints and martyrs. The statue of Laocoon alone could fetch over $100 million. Raphael's School of Athens fresco, if it could ever be sold, would go for over $200 million. But none of it is for sale. None of it is valued. None of it belongs to the Pope. Who owns all this wealth? That's the great paradox. The Golden Cross, the throne, the bank, the art. None of it belongs to the Pope personally. He is a guardian, not an owner. All assets are held by the institution of the Church, managed by councils, administrative bodies, and financial overseers. Pope Francis could wield the symbols, but never the possessions. And even then he drastically cut spending, rejected privileges, and simplified how the Church was run. At the helm of one of the most powerful and ancient institutions in the world stood a man who had it all: the right to power, wealth, grandeur, and symbolic immunity. And he turned it all down. Since the Renaissance, every pope lived in the Apostolic Palace, a lavish residence with 10 halls, a library, a private chapel, a medical suite, and round-the-clock security. Francis was the first pope in 120 years to say no. He chose Casa Santa Marta, a small guest house inside Vatican grounds. He had a simple room, a shared dining hall, a tiny chapel, no marble floors, no palace guards. He explained his choice this way: I must live close to the people, not locked away in a golden cage. Popes have a private summer residence, Castel Gandolfo, a palace perched above Lake Albano, with gardens, vineyards, fountains, and historic galleries. Francis never even moved in. He opened the palace to the public, turning it into a museum. A place once reserved for Baroque and Renaissance pontiffs is now a free space for tourists and pilgrims. He refused the papal tiara encrusted with hundreds of precious stones. He didn't wear a golden cross, only an iron one, the same he wore in Buenos Aires. He declined the traditional red papal shoes, a symbol of power, and instead always wore simple black ones. Instead of papal limousines or armored Mercedes, he rode in a small Fiat, a Ford Focus, or sometimes just a regular van. Once he was even spotted riding a bus with other priests after a public event. His salary? $0. Officially, Pope Francis never received a single euro in wages. All his needs, food, housing, security, medical care, were covered by the Vatican. But he didn't save, didn't invest, didn't use a personal bank account. Everything he owned could fit inside a suitcase. And yet, he held a level of power feared even by presidents. Francis wasn't just humble. He deliberately dismantled the culture of grandeur that had surrounded the papacy for centuries. It was a challenge to the system, a statement aimed not at symbols, but at the heart of faith. He didn't just preach poverty. He lived like a poor man inside the richest walls on earth. Every element of papal clothing is more than fabric. It is ritual, symbolism, and historical memory, backed by centuries of tradition, millions of believers, and even politics. Even when the Pope himself is as humble as Francis. Beneath the white cassock we see in photos lies ceremonial clothing, crafted entirely by hand over the course of months. For every pope, these garments are made by the Gamarelli family, the Vatican's official tailor since 1798. Materials include Italian silk, pure wool, gold thread, and embroidery done according to ancient canon. Every stitch is not just decoration, but a sacred sign, from ears of wheat and crosses to doves and symbols of St. Peter. The mozzetta, a short cape, changes color depending on the liturgical season: red for ordinary days, white for Easter, purple for Lent. The camaro, a red velvet winter cap lined with fur, is a symbol of continuity from medieval popes to the present day. The fascia is a long silk sash wrapped around the waist. Its end always hangs freely, a symbol of humility. The ring of the fisherman is one of the most recognizable symbols of papal authority. It is made of solid gold and features an image of St. Peter casting his net. This ring is not just ornamental. It was once used to seal official papal documents in wax. After a pope's death, the ring is destroyed in a special ceremony to prevent it from ever being misused. It's a ritual symbolizing the end of a pontificate's mission. For solemn masses, the Pope wears liturgical gloves, silk, hand-embroidered. On his feet, traditional papal shoes, once red, symbolizing the blood of martyrs. Francis refused them. Instead, he wore plain black shoes without any markings. On his chest, a cross, not encrusted with diamonds like his predecessors, but old, iron, worn with time. He had worn that same cross in Argentina as an archbishop, and he never took it off, even after becoming pope. Every piece of papal clothing speaks to the world. This is not just a man. This is the successor of St. Peter. But Francis redefined the symbolism. He wore it not as a display of greatness, but as a form of service. He didn't abolish tradition. He gave it new meaning. And in doing so perhaps made it even more sacred. He led the oldest and most influential religious institution on the planet. He had access to immense wealth, met with presidents and kings, but lived as if his world consisted of ordinary people, morning prayers, and letters from unknown school children in poor neighborhoods. Every day for Pope Francis began at 4:30 a.m. No cameras, no assistants, just silence, prayer, and reflection. He began with a private mass in the small chapel of Casa Santa Marta. No publicity, just a few guests, Vatican staff, nuns, and volunteers. These early morning services became famous around the world for their honesty and human warmth. He wasn't afraid to speak of pain, injustice, or fear. He spoke plainly and sincerely. Breakfast was orange juice and toast. Sometimes his favorite Argentine treat, membrillo, a sweet quince paste. Lunch and dinner were light and simple. No waiters, no lavish courses, no personal chefs. Francis often ate in the dining hall with other priests and Vatican staff. He believed that sharing a meal was a form of spiritual closeness. Every day, he received hundreds of letters from cardinals, politicians, refugees, prisoners, and children. Francis personally read some of them. He held children's letters especially dear. He would take some with him on trips. He replied. Sometimes, he even called in person. To him, they weren't just letters. They were living conversations with souls. He met with presidents, religious leaders, economists, writers, and environmental activists. But he always declined formal welcomes, red carpets, and scripted speeches. He preferred dialogue, not ritual. He would sometimes break his schedule to spend extra time with a simple nun or a widow who came without an invitation. In the evening, around 9 p.m., Zrenia the Pope would retreat to his room. No screens, no television, no smartphones, just a book, a journal, and prayer. That was his rhythm, his life. Not a show, not a strategy, but a path of service and sincerity. Pope Francis left behind no fortune, no collection, no titles. What he left was an idea that spiritual authority should not be a display of power, but an act of love and simplicity, that the Church can be modern, honest, and open, that even in a cynical world one can be sincere, poor, and deeply influential. He didn't leave this world as a monarch or as a head of state. He left as a man in white who proved true strength is living by faith, not by status.